The NBA draft is in just a few short days, and where there is smoke, there is fire. And that smoke is coming from the Spurs and the Hawks, who have done business in the past that may result in what takes place on draft day. But the Hawks and the Spurs could become suitable trade partners heading into the draft. Atlanta is reportedly open to trading down, while San Antonio's interest in French prospect Zaccharie Risacher. This is going to be very interesting because the Spurs control Atlanta's future for the next 3 years due to the DeJounte Murray trade, 2 unprotected picks in 2025 and 2027, and the right to swap picks in 2026. The Spurs have the ability to do whatever they want, and if Atlanta is forced to rebuild, maybe those picks could become valuable assets. But the Spurs have interest in Zaccharie Risacher, but who knows? There could be a debate for Alexandre Sarr, and that's what we're here to talk about today, is the difference between these two prospects and who is going to fit into the Spurs system. So, starting off, Alexandre Sarr. He stands 7'1", has a 7'4.5" wingspan. He is 216 pounds and is only 19 years old, turned 19 back in April. In just 17 minutes per game in the NBL, he averaged 9 points, 5 rebounds, 52% from the floor, and 29% from three. There is no question that Sarr is the best player in this draft class, but is he the best fit for the Spurs? Well, let's find out. The French native has made it clear that he is not interested in being drafted to Atlanta. He's refusing to work out for them, and a lot of boards have him to be a lock at number 2, where Risacher could be the first overall pick. But it's all about now who's going to make that pick. If San Antonio truly has eyes for the 19-year-old, then they're going to try their best to re-imitate what they did between 1999 and 2003 with the Twin Towers back then of Tim Duncan and David Robinson, and do it again with Victor and Sarr. Sarr reminds me a lot of when Victor came in the league, specifically on the defensive end. One of the most notable traits about Victor's game was how well he could defend any position on the floor quickly, and he could move at a lateral stance and guard anyone. Modern guards, bigs, and then not only could he guard well on the perimeter, but he could swat anything in his way. Sarr can do that. Sarr has that versatility. Sarr has that, athleticism. He's not just someone who's going to get blocks because he's 7'1". He's going to get blocks because he's 7'1", and the fact he's able to get up. He has a good vertical, good athleticism, and he is able to reject anything that comes in his way. One of the best shot blockers in the NBL, averaged 1.5 blocks a game this season. And he can play well off the pick and roll. He can force pressure to both the cutter and the handler, and he utilizes his length just as Victor does. Both of them on the same defense would send opposing offenses into panic. I mean, you want to put one of them on the perimeter, put one of them in the paint, good luck. You want to put Jeremy Sohan around the perimeter? Okay, fine. They got to work through Sohan, and then guess who's under the rim? Both those dudes. No one would score on that. And that is really the biggest possibility, which is endless. That is what you'd be getting by drafting Alexandre Sarr, because on the offensive end, he is not the unicorn that Wembanyama was coming into the league. A lot of scoring comes from his ability to get in transition. He's very quick for a 7-footer. That's kind of the new unicorn, modern day big man, but his quickness and speed allow for him to control the open floor. His long strides allows him to get in front of the pack, and he is able to create easy buckets. His handle needs a little bit more improvement, but he is capable of running the floor with the ball in his hands and pushing the pace to score. But outside of that, though, I just don't think these two young centers would be able to coexist on offense. Sarr's most prominent role would be as a pick-and-roll setter, where Victor is yet to fully develop in that. He's not the greatest screen setter, but he's obviously 7'5". He's a great cutter, and that is lob city. That's what that could be if the Spurs are able to get an electric facilitating point guard. But Alex gets a lot of his usage as a pick-and-roll runner. So at the end of the day, it's like, would you rather draft Sarr and take away some of that usage from Victor? Because no one expected Wemby to be this good this early, and the last thing you want to do is get the ball out of his hands. The Spurs tried to run a tall man lineup in the beginning of the season. They had Sohan, Vassell, Keldon, Wemby at the 4, and Zach Collins at the 5. It didn't work out at all. They tried to use Zach Collins to stretch the floor and shoot threes, but he didn't do that. That was one of the areas he lacked the most. Victor played his best basketball when he was the center and controlled both ends of the interior. And by drafting Sarr, his responsibility would fade off. And you don't want to take away that from him. When you have someone who is as good as Victor Wembanyama, who maybe doesn't even need to jump to dunk and can just swat anything that comes in his way, averaged, 3.2 blocks per game last season, you don't want to take away that usage from him. And that's what would happen if they draft Alex Sarr, because everything he can do, Victor can do better and do it significantly better. So why draft someone who has a similar role as the future face of your franchise? At the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense. And that's where the argument comes in to take Zaccharie Risacher. In 23 minutes a game, he averaged 11 points, 4 rebounds, 47% from the floor, and 39% from three. He stands 6'9" with a 6'10" wingspan. He's 204 pounds and is also 19 years old, turned back in April. The Spurs need spacing and the Spurs need length, and he provides both of those aspects. Once again, he shot 39% from three-pointer last season, and the Spurs needed a wing shooter. They tried using Julian Champagnie. They tried using Keldon Johnson, but none of those guys could do it consistently. And then they also became liabilities on the defensive end of the floor. Not only will he stretch the floor, knock down threes, but he's a very underrated off-ball scorer. I think that one is the best aspects of his game, is how he can navigate the floor, split through defenders, and cut to the basket. And that would make having a dynamic point guard, once again, who can make any read and just make plays for teammates. That's amazing. When you have someone who's 7'5" and a guy who could cut and get through the floor at any time, it's versatile. It opens up your offense. It creates more opportunities. And since he's so comfortable with knocking down wide open threes, that's going to draw defenders to him because they're not going to want to leave him open, and then it's going to stretch the floor allow him to cut to the basket. One of his most intriguing features is how comfortable he is with getting in transition to get offense. He stood out as the ball handler when running the 94 feet. This is someone who could get a rebound and just pound it on the floor, go coast to coast, and then get a morale-crushing poster or just something that is going to end up on Twitter within minutes. The Spurs don't have that. Yes, Victor Wembanyama can control the floor. He's the unicorn. He can do, dribbles that 7'5" people should not be able to do. But when you have someone who can just pound it and go, you really want that. You do. Julian Champagnie started 59 games for this team last season and is a one-dimensional scorer. He stands out and shoots threes, and he didn't even do it that well last season. You always found him spotted up behind the three-point line, and Zach can do that. That's where he does most of his damage. You can expect him to create opportunities beyond catch and shoot threes, which he was very good at last year. Once again, spaces the floor, he cuts, he shoots. That's really the tip of his game, and I'll get to more of that in a second. Now, you can't be a good 3-and-D wing by not being good at defense, and I promise you, the French native lacks none of that. His size and length allow for him to be a versatile defender as it is, but his mobility, once again, mobile, tall, lengthy defenders, that's where this game is going. The way he can move around the perimeter and how well he moves laterally allows for him to keep up with traditional guards who are shifty, who are quick, the Kyries. Obviously, no one will be able to guard him, but it's like the Kyries, the Darius Garlands, the Anthony Simonses. It's guys like that who are so shifty and have such a deep bag. That's something Risacher is comfortable with defending. He also plays well in recovery around the rim if he's blown by through traffic. He is able to jump up and send shots away. He's not known as a shot blocker, but you can expect him to make plays from behind if he ever falls, and most times he's not going to. Don't expect him to cause a lot of havoc in the passing lanes. He's not someone who's going to be a game-changing off-ball defender, but he's not going to slack. He's going to make basic reads. He's going to make basic rotations. He is a smart defender who knows how to navigate the floor and stay on his assignment, and that's all you're asking for because this team was maybe the second worst defensive team last season when Victor Wembanyama wasn't on the floor. He needs more help. Jeremy Sochan is great, but they still need more help because the wings' depth was atrocious. Champagnie couldn't defend. Keldon Johnson couldn't defend. He was a cone. Upgrade the defense and upgrade the 3-and-D. This forms a trio of Risacher, Sochan, and Wembanyama. Sochan is already displaying some of the most high potential defensive versatility that we've seen in the league. I think he could be one of the best perimeter defenders in the game. And Wemby may already be the best defender in the world. I still believe he got robbed of decoy, but I won't go into that right now. But these three can form a multi-layer defense, just like what OKC is establishing. They just traded for Alex Caruso. So they have elite defenders. Shea almost led the league in steals, and then you get Caruso, Dort, and then J-Dub, and then they just have to go meet Chet at the rim. So you get a trio of Risacher, Sochan, and Wemby. Guys have to fight the two forwards to meet Victor Wembanyama, who led the league in blocks for the first of many times last season. Now, he does lack as a space creator. That is his biggest issue. His handle isn't fully developed. He's not someone who is going to be super crafty, even though he may try. When pressure comes his way, he's going to fold. He struggles to take care of the basketball. But his fluidity and long strides is what allows for him to blow by defenders. He's kind of comfortable with a little behind the back, so that's something that you kind of see. And handles can be fixed. That's something that can improve. But when you have someone who is as long as him, who has so much versatility and can shoot the three-pointer, he's so hard to pass up on. And unfortunately, though, this is a hard draft because there's a lot of players who are going to end up being role player guys. There's not really true stars. That's why Zach and Sarr are kind of like the top guys because they have the highest ceilings. I think Rob Dillingham is in that conversation too, but this just isn't a fantastic draft. It isn't. And the Spurs need a dynamic role player that is missing. You can't have a championship window without key pieces in a complete team. Risacher will be a crucial piece to complete this team. You're not going to get any playmaking upside with him either. When he found himself having to process defenses, he struggled to make quick and correct decisions. He understands how to play unselfishly, though. He can play well around the perimeter, move the ball as well. But that's really about it. He's undeveloped as a passer, especially when it comes in traffic, and that's probably where a lot of his playmaking is going to have to be improved because if he's going to continue being an off-ball cutter, if he finds himself open, splitting the lanes, and Trey Jones kicks it to him, and then he's double-teamed, you're going to have to give it to maybe Victor Wembanyama. You're going to have to be able to put it up in the air for him and just tell him go get it. That's something that's going to need to be vastly improved on. It's just his ability to maybe soft passes around the paint and just get it up to Victor because that's where a lot of his playmaking damage is going to come from. Driving in, getting stopped, and then having to kick it to Victor. Now, if the Hawks are selling, the Spurs need to be the buyer. The Hawks sold their entire future, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, by trading for DeJounte Murray. Landing the first overall pick may be what sends this franchise into rebuild mode. Trey and DeJounte have not been able to coexist. They're two guards who need the ball in their hands to be good, and if one doesn't have the ball in his hands, he's not going to be efficient. We saw how DeJounte Murray was able to take a step up after Trae Young got injured, which displays how the two are not able to coexist on the floor at the same time. Young has expressed his desire to play with Victor Wembanyama. And I've talked about this on my channel already, but if Atlanta wants to sell, step up. You have the assets. In this mock trade that I've made, listen, it's a lot, but I give them 2 young players in Keldon Johnson and Malachi Branham, and then I give them 4 and 8, which is a lot. And then give them back their rights to their first-round picks. But you're getting Trae Young, who is on contract for another 3 years, and the first overall pick. This is a suitable package. Unprotected. So you let them take 2, young stars. Maybe it's like a Stephon Castle and a Donovan Clingan, which they may have interest in taking at one if they don't want to trade away their pick. And then you give them back their picks that they gave to you, because this allows for them to tank in 2025 and get Cooper Flagg. 2027. Who knows yet? I'm not sure. But this gives them so much room to build for the future. And then it solves all the Spurs' needs. They get their dynamic point guard in Trae Young, who can score on all 3 levels, who is built for big-time moments and has led his team down the playoffs and down the stretch. And then they get Zaccharie Risacher, who's a 3-and-D wing that they desperately need. By doing this trade, it lets them solve all of the problems that they had last season, and no other team can match the offer that the Spurs are able to make, because if the Hawks want to go into rebuild mode, they will need their picks back. They're not going to trade for 2029 picks from the Lakers. They're not going to trade for 2027 picks from the Lakers. If they plan to completely rebuild, they are going to trade back for their own picks. Like I said, you may think that's too much, but this is the draft where you trade picks. So the Spurs give up some of their own picks, and then Atlanta gets their picks back. It's a win-win for both sides. Spurs get to solve the problems that they had. Atlanta gets to go into rebuild mode. There's not a way that both teams lose. There's not a way that either team loses. If you want the Spurs to make this trade, let me know by hitting a like on this video and subscribing if you have yet to. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm about to be on an Alaska mission trip, so I will be gone for draft season, which is unfortunate, but I will be active on Twitter. So if you guys don't follow me over there, go ahead and do it already. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, I am Ty Talk Sports, and I will see y'all next time.